Yeah. Hello. Hi.
Hello, Bio. Hello, everybody. I feel we should do a greeting.
Yeah, unmute yourselves, and I'm just looking at the faces. But yeah, unmute your mics and let's greet. Okay, let's not be so polite.
Hello.
Hello.
Morning.
Good
morning.
Good
Happy to
be here.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening.
Howdy.
Well,
How's everyone doing today?
Hello.
Awake.
Good, awake. Yeah.
Just barely.
Miles was doing a dance there.
Why not?
We're dancing with mountains, right?
Mountains.
That's
right.
the idea.
Okay, Miles. I'm with you.
I think if there's a next course, it should be just about singly dancing, just dancing, no talk.
No
Just
talk is dangerous.
just dance and shake the body.
I think it should be danced from continent to continent.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like physically. Are you saying physically?
Oh,
right?
yeah. We should all just meet in a physical continent
dance.
place, and we dance there, and then we go to the next place and dance.
That would be awesome.
Wouldn't
That would be great. That would be great. If we can find a way to just get a plane or something to, it'll be good. We will need to pay tickets to find each other.
With all the quantum physics and everything that will happen in the future, we can all just get in the tube and meet there.
All right. Great to see you, Signy. So Brenda is joining us. We just met a couple of minutes ago. She has a sore throat, but she's still here with us to open up the space. So I'll just put off my mic as we await the blessings of the elders, the spirits, the world at large.
Alexa, I couldn't hear you when you spoke, even though your mic was off. Just so you know. Hi, Nee.
Hey, Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
Brenda, your mic is off.
there we go.
Yeah.
Good morning, beauties. It's lovely to see your faces and your spirits coming through the screens. So I was asking spirit and ancestors what wanted to be shared this morning. And I think I've read it before, but spirit asked me to read the Hopi prophecy again, and then to ask us to sing together. And I'll invite you, if you have an instrument close to you, to have it close by for when we start singing. And if you don't, that's okay too. Hopi Elder speaks. You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. And there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for the leader. Then he clasped his hands together and smiled and said, this could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. Celebrate, celebrate. At this time in history, we are not to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey has come to a halt. The time for the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we have been waiting for. So I'm going to go into the little chat. I'm going to put a little something in the chat, but you don't need to look at it if you don't want to. So what Spirit and Ancestors were asking me to share was just, and I think this has come up in other conversations, it's important to speak our differences, and it's important to listen to one another, but it's also important to remember that we're one family and one sacred hoop, and that we're trying to find our way back to that sacred hoop. So we have to have this balance of, just like in our families, of challenge and then celebration and feasting and loving and dancing. And so one very simple song that Spirit wanted us to sing together today is one that many of you have heard before. So I'm going to just start singing, and some of you, if you know it, jump on in when you feel ready. And the lyrics are very simple. Mother Earth is very excited that humanity is waking up. She talks to me a lot. Yeah, and she's glad that we're starting to remember who we are, and she's asking me to ask you to remember that as we start the call. And forgive my throat because it's a little scratchy today, but I trust that the other voices in the circle will carry us together. Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. Earth my
body,
water my blood, air my breath, and fire
my spirit.
Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit.
So I'm offering you a little bit of sage to help release whatever negative energies you may have picked up, or maybe yours, whatever needs to be released. And then I'm also offering you some sweet grass so that we remember our sweetness even when we're in the challenging conversations. We're able to hear one another and our differences. That we make space for the different stories that we all carry so we can come back into the sacred hoop. Thank you for singing with me. I love you.
Love it too, Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda.
I greet you all. Greetings are, as I say all the time, important to where I come from. So I greet you. I just wanted to notice for a minute or for a second that when we were singing together, we were singing across time zones, not just from different places. We were singing from different times, and yet we created some sort of harmony. Not the most wonderful choir you've ever heard, but that's just wonderful. That's just okay. It's good. And maybe that's the call, the ethics we're trying to cultivate here, to notice that we are a constellation of beings and to find our home in each other. So today we're going to listen to Sister Eve, and then we'll have some breathing space to talk with one another after the stories have been told. With Eve's blessing, I've been asked to speak before inviting her, so I will speak. During the time of my speaking, if you feel pressed, if you want to stretch, if you want to go to the bathroom, the pee break, the wonderful pee break, please do so. You don't feel any need to stay glued to your seats. So yeah, I'd like us to do something just to close our eyes for a bit. Just close our eyes. I welcome all of you again from wherever you're coming from night and day and midday, wherever you're coming from, you're welcome here. Whatever you are, whoever you are, whatever you've been through, I welcome you here. If your eyes are closed, I would just like you to think about your journey. Obviously, not merely your journey through the course, but your journey at large. Think about your story. Think about what you would respond to the question, who am I? Who am I? What is that which grounds me and anchors me and gives me breath and gives me hope? What is the one thing that I couldn't possibly stop doing, even if I meet an obstacle on the way? Now, if you will, I'd like you to think about your pain, the things that have been done to you, the things you've suffered, the things that eat at you. You know, those small little critters that have no name, they have no psychological category, but they're there, they're a thing, they're real, because they eat at you. They're your little demons, if you will. It could be something as high and lofty and as recognized socially as oppression, as exploitation. And it could be something as seemingly private as depression, as wanting to cover yourself away, as wanting to hide, as not feeling confident enough to speak or to step forward into a space. I just want you to hold that feeling, if you will. Just sit with it for a moment. Don't rationalize it. Don't push it away. Just sit with it. Now do the impossible and welcome that pain to this gathering. Welcome it here. Don't chase it away. Give it a seat. Yeah, I'd like you to vocalize that, if you will, in any way you can. I won't give you the words. Welcome your pain in. Say something to it. I'm asking us to do that. You don't need to do it with your mics. You can open your eyes. You can open your eyes. But please do it. Say something to that moment, that feeling. Welcome your pain in. Welcome the grief in.
I've been waiting for you. Welcome, my beloved.
Welcome the failure in.
I welcome. I feel or came up with the pain that I have in relation to my mother. The fact that she doesn't understand a word I say. I speak. I remember when we were kids, just talking all the time. She doesn't understand. She comes running down, shouting in Bengali, and I know the pain of all that. I can see it on her face. I can see that the pain that she has, that she can't understand what I'm saying. I've grown up and she still doesn't understand me, and I've tried so many times to make her understand who I am in English. I've even had letters translated to Bengali, and she still doesn't understand, and I've finally given up. Not given up, but I can't make my own mother understand who I am. It's a failure of culture, it's a failure of language, it's a failure of, and also me denying my Bengali heritage and not wanting to be Muslim, not wanting to be what she wants me to be, and yet trying now to look back on that and hold that, and see what is it that I can learn from this failure. That is not just me, that is everyone. There's so many of us in this second generation position have failed, and yet there's something more that can be got from this pain, something to hold and to be understood that there's so many of us, and to hold this grief and to learn from it and be bigger than the grief. And so I bless the grief. Oh.
Brother, I wish I were there to hug you. Thank you. It's all welcome. Okay, did I interrupt someone? Does anyone want to vocalize?
I just wanted to say I welcome the grief and the pain of feeling like I want to give up, like I can't pull people together, like I can't stay in a positive place. Welcome that challenge and the opportunity to push through that or take it with me, whatever, transform it, I guess. That's all.
Marnie, thank you. Thank you.
I would like to say something. I would like to take both hands of the pain and grief in building relationship with colleagues, relationship with a lover, relationship with family. The pain I caused them and the pain they caused me. And I take both hands and hold that.
Thank you, Celia. Thank you. Thank you. We can't see them, but they're here with us. In whatever monstrous form they assume, we welcome them here to sit with us. Is this pop psychology or ignored reality? Let me tell a couple of stories. Remember that Yoruba call that I taught you guys when we started the course? It was, yeah, friend. It was alo, and then you say alo, okay? Mm-hmm. Can we do that? Just exercise your vocal cords and shift into the space, and let's do it together, okay? If you're feeling shy, that's a good idea that you should be doing this with us, okay? So, alo.
Hello.
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 Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Don't be afraid.
Hello.
Don't be afraid about culture.
Hello.
Don't be afraid about culture.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
All right, cut it out.
Oh.
I was going to say until you guys went away with the hello thing and made it that don't be afraid about cultural appropriation. We like to share it. We like to share the hello greeting. So don't be afraid to step into that space. We welcome you. We're hospitable. Say hello anywhere, and then you can open that space, okay? I have a friend called Manish Jain that some of you might know. And we were with my wife and my dear sister, Erin. We were in Switzerland 5 years ago. And I remember, oh, there's someone typing really fast. It's just, okay. And I remember during that moment, I don't know if I've told some of us this story before, that we were a group, we were exploring some concepts around entanglement. And then of course, if you're in Switzerland, you want to explore the mountains. And so for the delegates that came, some taxis came along and they parked and they were ready to take all of us. The only problem was that the taxis were not enough, according to some understandings of space. And so Manish opened the door, Manish being the extrovert, the extreme extrovert that he is, jumped to open all the doors of the taxi, inviting as many people to get into the taxi as possible, as we do here in India. 7, 8 people can go into an auto rickshaw and there's still space for one more. But in this huge taxi that looked like a truck to us, there could only take 2 people, you know, and the taxi driver was quite firm on that. 2 people, no more. And yeah, like I said, Erin was there. I don't know if she witnessed that particular incident, but I remember Manish bursting out, but there's more space. There's still space. There's more room. We can take more people into this car. And I tell you that story because I feel we are in a paradigm that is thankfully being devalued or is being composted. But yet we are still in a paradigm that teaches us a scarcity of space, that there isn't room for every one of us. There is only room for a few. And the ethical imperative for those of us here is to struggle for space, is to struggle to be seen. We've forgotten the abundance that the world is weaved with. We've forgotten the beautiful richness and depth that comes with being alive and being present. And so we scramble for space at the table where there is a feast behind us. It's like focusing on a racetrack in a stadium where there are other ways to play games. And we've forgotten that. So I wanted to say a few things about this idea of whiteness, this trope, this scarcity mentality, this trauma-based idea that limits us to our skin, that says your identity is what you have, and all the things that have happened to you are the sum of what you experience, your destiny. I wanted to see if we can open up space for something different, maybe something that makes us stranger, weird. In Nigeria, where I come from, a country of more than 100 million people. Nia, am I right? I think we're closing in on 200 million, if I'm not.
Yes, 180.
So 200 million.
Yes.
A country of 200 million people, with 5 psychiatric wards spread out across the country. maybe altogether 100 bed spaces. So definitely not enough clinical psychologists to go around, not enough psychotherapists to go around. The discourse around mental health and mental illness, as you know, it's the academically inclined would want to call it, is that we need bed spaces. We need a way to catch up with the West, you know, to build more facilities so that we can be like America. And so if you were to come to Nigeria and you witnessed our own electoral cycle, you would see politicians maybe in the stripe of the recently deposed Robert Mugabe, holding up his 2 fingers. Eve, congratulations on that, by the way. Holding up 2 fingers and saying, I promise you that you guys we would be like America, we would be like Europe. In 4 years, we would have all this, and promises after promises, we don't get what we're promised, so to speak. So this is the context that I trained in and became a clinical psychologist in. I didn't do much practice, but I went into teaching in the university. But here's the story, the discourse around mental illness, the assumptions around it. 1, that mental health is really about issues of mental illness. 2, the crisis in mental health is about staffing numbers in beds. Nothing else, nothing else. Don't consider anything else. This is the real crisis. 3, mentally ill people must be treated in a hospital institution. There's no other way to think about getting well or recovery. This is the space. There's no other space. There's no room for any other kind of consideration about what is happening with us. It must be in a recognized, government-accredited institution. 4, mentally ill people must take medication. If you're not taking medication, then there's something wrong with you. 5, mental health is about more and better mental illness spaces. Yeah, mental illness spaces and concepts. And then 6, mental illness or mental illness practices or clinical praxis and institutions are underfunded and are central, and so we need to decentralize them. And the last one is the media story about mental health is about patients and their threat to society. So if you came to Nigeria, especially the city, like a bustling city, like a robust city like Lagos, you might find people wandering on the streets. We call them mad people. They just wander, they punch the air, they say a lot of things to no one in particular. And so as clinical psychologists, we're trained to think of those people as needing our help. And so it's about policy and installing politicians who would help these people. That's all the conversation. That's what it's about. But one day, I and a few other people got together and we decided to challenge these assumptions, to say, what if we're thinking about this wrong? What if there are other ways to think about these events that we've kind of missed? What are our blind spots here? And so we dived into the files and read Professor Lambo, an old-time Nigerian clinical psychologist who warned Nigerians and Africans in general that the moment we start thinking about mental illness paradigm like this, then we're lost, and that we need to find the darkness. We need to find the Yoruba healers or the Igbo healers or the traditional healers that our major religions have pushed away. And so I went to find them. Working in a Christian university, it was difficult finding people that have been labeled of the devil, demonic people. But I went anyway and I looked for them and I sat with them. I sat with them through the surprising rituals that they initiated with people who came to seek them for help. I saw people stripping their clothes. It didn't look like something a UN health official would approve of, but there was something visceral and corporeal and feminine and grounded and earthy about what was happening, about people pouring rich, thick palm oil on food and offering it to the gods or offering it to the earth. There was something really powerful and evocative about that. The more surprising thing about speaking to 7 Yoruba healers and shamans was that none of them tried to get rid of pain. They taught me different things about pain, but it wasn't about getting rid of it. So I want to speak about that for a while. How we in the West, and I say we in the West because I'm hybrid. I'm trained by the West. I was brought up in the West. I watched Western television. So I am of the West. As I said in a talk recently in California, I was white. I've always been white before I realized that I could take on other colors. So here's what I learned from these men. First, that pain is a shamanic opening. Some of you may have heard of Malidoma Some from Burkina Faso and from the Dagara tribe, people who speak Dagari, a beautiful people. To see that resonance across cultures in the continent. What these men taught me was that pain is a shamanic opening. It's a wound, all right, but the wound is not an opening in your body or an opening on your skin. It's where the world inflects on itself, so to speak, and touches itself. It's an opening in the world at large. It's not, think of a black hole and how that's a rift in time-space. And think of a wound in your skin. You might think that that's private or an individual affair. What these people taught me was that a wound is a portal to other dimensions. And so the idea is not to get rid of pain, it's to sit with the pain. It's to embroider the circumference of your opening and to notice what wants to come through and what wants to leave. But even more powerfully, it's an invitation to initiate ourselves to other ways of being in the world. It's to find a way to travel. This same Malidoma Some said, every wound is an initiation. Whether it's oppression, whether it's exploitation, whether it's the so-called private psychological affair, the things that go on in our head. Malidoma Some would invite us to think of that as an opening. 1, it's an education. 2, it's a destabilization of the familiar. And 3, it's an opportunity to travel to other dimensions. What are the things that I learned from these men? 2, that healing is listening to what cannot be named, not about covering a wound or getting rid of it. It's about listening to that which cannot be named. And I'll just illustrate that with this. When my wife and I were, when we were pregnant, we had already named, as I said to a few of you, we had already named our child Alethea. Before we met her, we already decided that we wanted to name our first daughter Alethea. It didn't quite go well with my mother, as Nii would also understand, because in Nigeria, and I think most parts of Africa, the parents, the elders, give the name to the child. You just don't name a child out of the blues. I've watched many American sitcoms where the couple sit lovingly with the child and the mother looks into the father's eyes and says, what do you think we should name him? How about John? How about this? How about Jane? How about anything that comes to mind at that moment? Or how about we name him after someone else? It's radically different where I come from. So in Yoruba land, for instance, they would wait until the 8th day and they would press the feet of the child on the earth and they would all listen together to see what name wants to come forth. And mind you, a name in Yoruba land, for instance, it's not a way of labeling someone. You might say that the Western way of giving a name is to label a person, to affix that identity in space-time. Whereas in Yoruba land and in many indigenous cultures I'm coming across surprisingly, the idea is to listen to what cannot be named, is to track the person's flow, through time and space, is to call upon the elders. And that's why Yoruba people have something else called an oriki. An oriki is poetry. It's like a poem. You sing an oriki to someone you love. A father has an oriki for his daughter. It's like a name, but it's a name that is momentary. It fades away with that moment. So you could say in an oriki to your daughter that you who gave your mother trouble, but you who came from a long line of hunters and warriors and stuff like that. And that's an oriki. It's gone. That name is gone for that moment. And another oriki comes forth in another moment. So names, the very ontology of names, is different from the West and to the so-called global South. Something is happening there that invites us to expand our notion of space, expand our notion of opportunity. I wrote some more. Pain is a gathering of bodies. It's not individual. You might say to yourself, oh, this thing I feel is within me. It's inside of me. It's my issue. It's my stuff. And so you come to a clinical psychologist or a shrink like me, and then we tell you to get yourself together and get back out there and make yourself good, or, you know, with the gusto of American exceptionalism or industrialization, to make something of yourself. But another invitation says that pain is not an individual affair at all. It's not private. It's a public matter. It's a gathering of bodies. It's a circle of being. The pain that you feel, that you want to localize into your state, your psychological state, is just another performance of ideological reductionism to find the cause of an issue in something tiny, infinitesimal, just something small. But we're invited, I think, not just by indigenous realities, but by even elements in Western traditions, to notice that something else is happening with our pain. That it's not just us that is going through a shamanic opening or a shift. It's the world at large. I don't know how many of you know that this Scorpio period is a time of wilting, and it's a time of things falling apart. It's a time of rupturing and things opening up. My sister Amanda, I can see you, taught me that and reminded me that this season is a time, the weather is a time for things drying up and opening up to something different. What if we're somehow connected to these moments? What if the things we're so quick to name as depression or schizophrenia, which we have no biological reason to name, to call all of that. There's no biological substrate for schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or any of those things. What if those things are entanglements with seasons and worlds and ancestors and indigeneity and soil and rivers? What if that is what is happening? So in the social justice world, we might say, for instance, that the pain we feel, the pain of oppression and exploitation and displacement and loss, is our pain. And the way to find ourselves out is to seek some already idealized notion of justice, something awaiting us in some teleological distance. Just down the line, like a technological singularity, it's awaiting us, it's there, it's predetermined. And so justice, one day, justice will happen, and then everything will be made right. But we somehow forget the frames by which we make these ideas of healing and justice and recovery and becoming well. What we're being invited to see, a different cultivation or a different ethical subject would see that when injustice is done to you, we're not to locate the matter inside the doer of that injustice, because that would immobilize us as well. And that the sum of all the terrors and the terrifying things that have happened to us is not the sum of our trauma. Trauma is much bigger than all the things that have happened to us. That's what I'm inviting us to notice. The pain we feel is much bigger than all the things we've that has happened to us. If we're to add all those moments, it wouldn't add up to the trauma that we're open to because we're porous, because we're entangled, because we are of each other. So this is a different ontology of pain. This is a different noticing that we're being invited to embrace. And then I learned from those elders that your trauma is your elder. Your trauma is your mother, your father. It is that which wants to birth you anew and open you up to something maybe that warrants the term shape-shifting. Is this a dismissal of exploitation? Not in the least. It's an invitation to reshape ourselves as a way of addressing oppression and exploitation. So when you're feeling stuck, I learned this as well. When you're feeling stuck, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you feel that there's nowhere to go, don't be afraid to sit in the stillness of that moment. Don't be in a rush to get ahead, to rush for growth or to rush for progress. Stay with the stuckness, because as I've written some recently to us, maybe that's when real movement happens. Wendell Berry says, the impeded stream is the one that sings. And I think he understood at some level that when we're stuck, everything else moves. And so the indigenous invitation to stay with that stuckness, with that feeling of being overwhelmed or wanting to drown or not having a word to say or being shut out because you feel oversensitive to the needs of others, which is a good thing, by the way. Let's stay with that. It's difficult, it's murky, it's messy, but that's the invitation of being lost in order to find our way. And so I learned from those men as well that we are not weird enough. We're tame. We've become tame. We've become domestic. And the powers we're open to as human beings, as non-human creatures, if I may say as well, because we're ecosystems of non-human allies. The powers we're open to have been shut out by our modern framings. And so we're not weird enough. We're not as weird as we could possibly be to address even the smallest insignificant terrors that haunt us. We're not weird enough. One shaman told me that you people, and by you people who is referring to those of us that were trained researchers coming to him to learn, he said, you people have reduced everything to a pill. And by reducing everything to a pill, you've forgotten the magic in the world around you that is already part of your healing, that is already part of your recovery. So we're not weird enough. What will it take to get weird? What will it take to open up to other realities that are beckoning on us? And finally, I learned the language of trees. And I'll end with this story. That I found an elder in I don't know what to call her. She rejects the title of, she rejects the label woman and the label man, and she hasn't quite come up with what she wants to call herself. Her name is Karen Barad, and she's a theoretical physicist and a feminist icon and a mother to me. In California last year, I almost drowned on my birthday. I went swimming when I shouldn't have gone swimming. Let me just say that I don't know how to swim. But friends said, let's go to the river, let's go do something. So I went to a river called the Yuba River, and I dived inside and I went in. And all my friends, knowing me as a trickster, felt Bayo is just joking, but I was drowning. Long story short, I survived and they dragged me out. But before that, I met with Karen Barad. And I remember speaking with this woman who beckoned on me, who summoned me. I was doing a talk in Hopland, and to summon me to her side. And when an elder calls you in Africa, you go. There's no excuse. You don't say, I will call you another time. You make all efforts to go and sit by her side. So I went there and I had a beautiful conversation with her. But the most significant thing that happened there was I knelt down before her. Now, you don't do that to anyone. Nii, I'm sorry, I keep on calling you out, Nii. But he could bear witness to the fact that you just don't kneel before anyone. It's reserved for people who are Yoruba as well, who are with us, you know, who identify with our history. But that day, I found myself wanting to kneel before her. She called me out and she said, I want to bless you. And before she said that, I already felt a voice telling me, kneel down and receive a blessing from an elder. And there was this argument in my mind. How dare, you know, she doesn't deserve my kneeling down before her. But I learned in that moment a gracious hospitality, the kind of hospitality maybe we're invited to embrace now, to welcome the stranger in. And so I listened to that voice and I knelt down and she laid her hands on my head and she whispered in my ear and said, may you be prosperous in all you do, just like my father would have done it if we were alive. May you be prosperous in all you do. May you be successful in all you do. And I bless you. And I opened my eyes and there were tears streaming from my eyes. And I don't usually tell the story because I can't quite understand what happened there. I don't know what was going through her. I don't know what was going through me. But in that moment, a teacher found a student and an elder found a child. But I tell you that because I feel there's a language, there's a posture, there's a message of hospitality that is streaming around us in today's world, that is inviting us to not be so tethered to the models that we're used to the architecture of justice that we're used to the structures of vengeance that we're used to, or to the structures of destinations and arrivals that we're used to. And it's inviting us to fall apart. And it's difficult to do. We have witnessed it ourselves. If you've been to Facebook, there's a lot of conversation happening there right now in our discussion forum. And it's difficult. It's hard. Let's admit it. It's hard to stay with trouble. And yet, this is the hard work. This is the powerful work that we're being called to do. Because we may not figure it out at some conceptual, intellectual level, but yet our heart knows. Our body knows what it wants to do. The world knows what it wants to do. Our pain, our wounds are inviting us to stay in that moment, to sit, to not try to figure things out, but just find and cultivate and improvise a ritual with which we can find each other. Have I said everything I want to say? I think so. Sister Eve called me yesterday and told me a story that I will not paraphrase or summarize or circumvent, but one I feel, and I'm surprised and grateful that she wants to share here. And so I want to invite us to shake our bodies loose and open up space and invite and welcome Eve to share about becoming strange. Eve, sister, you're welcome.
Thank you, Bayo. Hello, everybody. Hello, dear ones. So this may be a difficult story to listen to. And I guess it's, for me, the gift that you bring is the trust that I've felt myself grow gently with you over the times that we've been together. And when I started with you in the Activists of the Otherwise, I called something about a trail of enchantment. And in particular, I focused the first session on embodiment and living close to the bone. And especially really paying attention to our own experience. And I think what this session today has challenged me to pay attention with you to my experience. And our second was the stories of engagement, what it means to engage each other, interrupting our colonization, and to touch the hurting places and not to protect ourselves from nothing. And we went much into creativity and to play. But I ended, and I was just looking at this, and I ended saying, when we talk about engaging and engaging with our bodies, does it mean that anything goes? Does entanglement mean we're always equal? Every story carries the same weight. There's no dark and light. There's no right and wrong. There's no good and evil. We're just all one. And I said to you, I don't know. I absolutely don't know. And I think I ended saying that I was going to go for joy. And I hadn't planned this session, my final one with us. And I've decided to tell a story of what happened to me the Sunday past, 6 days ago. That's what I said to Bio is that if I had to fantasize or create a session that wasn't authentic, I would have lost the heartbeat of the course, and I would have lost the heartbeat of my own journey. So that's what I wanted to do today. I fought for my life on Sunday. And you see me here, I won. I was attacked and sexually assaulted. And I thought I would try to tell it. And then this word strong that I keep hearing, that I'm starting to get a visceral response to. How very grateful I am that we could rephrase it perhaps. So I went away with friends for the weekend. 2 women from the UK and 1 from Australia, who I know very well have funded my work for many years. You know, I live in a dangerous country. I assume you know I live in a dangerous country. And I guess the world is dangerous. So we walked on the beach on Friday and on Saturday and on Sunday morning. And I love walking. I've walked many kilometers, many pilgrimages. Walking is where things get solved for me. And on the Sunday afternoon, my friends said that they were tired, they weren't going to walk. And I said, it's too beautiful to not walk. The sea was sparkling and the beach is long. And the signs, the notices in the B&Bs are, please don't leave any of your things around because there is petty theft. But you're safe to walk anywhere. It's a very safe place. It's a very small town. And so I started walking to the sarong and, bathing suit just my sunglasses, no phone, no nothing. And when you click in, I think, with nature, many of you will know, there's that beautiful Greek word, I think it's ecstasis. It means ecstasy. You create a space of ecstasy, a bliss. Nature creates it with us, and it's healing beyond all measure. And so I walked just as far as we'd walked the days before. And I saw far ahead 3 small figures. And immediately, the way I walk when I'm alone is I see, and if there's anything that doesn't feel good, I immediately turn back. And this time I had that debate in myself. It's not that I did not listen to my intuitive voice. I heard it, and I consciously decided, I have to learn to trust again. I have to learn to trust. And so I continued walking, and the 3 turned out to be men. And the fisherman greeted me, and we greeted, and I was good. And I carried on walking, but it only took a minute or 2, and all my energy I got a terrible feeling. So I looked ahead, and there was just someone in a very far distance. I couldn't even hardly see that they were human, so tiny. And I quietly looked around, and I saw 2 of the people disappearing over the sand dunes, and one of them had doubled back. And he was still a way away, but I knew. I just knew. And I couldn't run. The sea was shallow, so I couldn't even go swim, which I would. I'm a good swimmer. So I stood in the sea and I prayed. And I prayed until the calmness came into me. I just said, God, help me with whatever it is that I am to face. And I found the calm, the space, and I turned to face this person. And as I turned, he walked a few paces to me, and he put his hand to his jeans and pulled out a very long knife, started pulling, and he said, "Shh, if you keep quiet, I will not kill you." And my body took over. I didn't think. All that happened was I screamed and screamed and screamed. And I knew full well the beach was empty. I didn't, as if no one would ever hear me. But I screamed with every scream that was in my 58-year-old body. I didn't look at him after that. I fought with all my might. I kicked, he threw me into the sea, onto my back, and I clenched my entire body and I kicked, and I carried on screaming. And he tried to break my costume, my swimming costume, against my body, so it was terribly sore. And I wouldn't look, and he was swearing and violent that I've never, ever, ever even dreamed about. I've heard about, but I've never dreamed that it would be like that. And he penetrated me with his fingers in the fight, and I wrapped over onto my tummy in pain, but also in determination that my body wouldn't let this human come. It wouldn't let. And I blocked my legs together. They couldn't even open, even if my mind told me to. My body took over. And then he pushed my head under the water. and kept me to try and drown me. And I struggled and struggled, and only in that moment a thought came. I looked above my head because the water's only about this deep and that I was under. And I thought, God, is it going to end like this? And I gave a huge lunge, but I can't say that it was my lunge that did it, because in that moment, I realized that that tiny person I had seen in the distance, I had seen as I'd come up once, that he'd come closer. And although he didn't come to rescue me in the sea, his walking past at that moment shifted something in my attacker. And it turned out later that the fisherman knew whom my attacker, he knew him. And something in the man that was trying to drown me, because I knew my next breath was going to be water. I knew that then I would lift it, and I could lift my head. And as I lifted it, I saw his face again, and he leant over to try and take this very cheap little stud that I'm terribly proud about because I had my ears pierced 3 weeks ago as a celebration. And even that I wasn't going to let him get. So I pushed that with all my might. And I was grunting. It was like an animal. It's an animal, it's all I can say. And suddenly it was gone. And I couldn't stand up. So I scrambled myself out of the shallows of the sea. And I looked down and I saw that he had cut my swimming costume from between my legs. So it was hanging. And my sarong was gone and my glasses were gone. And I couldn't walk the beach home like that. And the very small fisherman in the distance, when he saw that the man had gone, had disappeared, he turned around and he came back. And by some strange chance, he was wearing 2 pairs of sweatpants, tracksuit pants that day. And so he took a pair off and I could put the pants on. And we tried to walk home, and we eventually got there. And my friend delivered me with my friends, and he burst into tears. He said, never ever in the history of that town has there been an attack, but he'd never ever seen somebody trying to kill a woman and cut off her clothes. And he couldn't help because he had such a big knife. And after that, it was magical. The police arrived in 7 minutes. They told me that this is called rape in my country. I'd assumed that I had kept saying I wasn't raped because I'm so proud of that. But they said, no, any form of penetration is. And so there was a sexual assault group that came, flying squad. And I'm so proud of the government services in my country. Because we are very quick to criticize in a new democracy government institutions that haven't always worked and don't always work. And there is a great deal of corruption. But in this context, in this tiny little space, with the most human humans that I've ever encountered, with a Xhosa woman with a bulletproof vest wrapping me in her arms, and where I sat through the hospital the next day to make sure that the district surgeon could examine my small injuries to be able to give evidence in court. Because it turned out that this person is terrorized the community, and they were looking for him for violent housebreak, and he'd been living in a graveyard, sleeping in an open grave. My family came round me, my friends, There's been nothing but an incredible love. The most important thing is that I fought for my life. And this precious sense of the fragility of who we are has overwhelmed me for the last week, the 6 days. As if I've been to an edge and come back. And Bio said I didn't come back strange. I can't come back strong. I came back strange. The young, beautiful constable woman phoned on Thursday to say that they had arrested the attacker. They knew exactly who he was because he had Satan tattooed on his neck. And the fisherman and had witnessed him, knew exactly who he was. They knew him by name and they knew him by deed. And so he's kept now without bail. And my 24-year-old son, wow, Mom, you fought Satan and you won. It's much too soon to try and make sense. But what I've done in the beginnings of being between worlds, I feel as if I'm still between worlds, as if there's portals that I've touched and entered and come back from, and I can't go back into the world as I knew it. It's not the same. I'm absolutely clear that the prayer that I made in the sea was able to hold something so that I was not stabbed and I was not raped in the way I know rape. And that a fisherman walked past who could change the game, whose presence saved my life as I know it. And what I've done as my rituals, and I think there will be many still to come, is I'm very cautious of this. I've had deep help. So I didn't think of this myself, but of the victim-perpetrator relationship and how very frequently we absorb the parts of the perpetrator where they can come unbidden into us. And in some ways we start acting on that violence. We act violently from an experience that we don't know what to do with. So I found a natural object outside, and I've kept it outside, and I built a little wall around it, and that's the symbol of this perpetrator. And it happened to have a spiral shell with a spiral going all the way, I could think, to infinity. And what I've thanked is for the experience of fighting for my life. And I have no interest in how terrible his childhood was, how appalling history he's come from. I deeply understand, because all my work has been rooted in a different politics, as you know, if you look at my website or my... I have no interest in that. I'm very, very relieved that if I in any way could stop him harming any other woman ever, that I would have sat in the hospital for 3 weeks if it took it, to be able to make sure that to the best of our ability we hold. But there is an experience in what I've experienced that is unparalleled. I also made a beautiful shrine outside my front door for protection with hearts and water, and I make candles every morning. I light candles to thank for my life, to thank for all of our lives. And I really love it. It's got a big heart in the middle, and then it's surrounded by another heart, and a bowl of water with 5 symbols of heart stones. And then I went back to the beach. I went back to the sea, but a sea that I know and love. I didn't go to the lonely parts, but I washed the place that my sons were born from with the seawater to remind myself of what's sacred, what's incredibly beautiful, and what is unable to be touched. And now I think the energy when you've touched fighting for your life, there's an energy in my body that's entirely different, and I think it needs to recalibrate. So I'm going to only, it's such a body experience that I've only started with body, with my yoga. I do yoga 3 times a week. I'll start again on Sunday. With my, there's something called trauma release. It's where you shake into the psoas muscle. You probably all know it, but there's a way of shaking that was nothing you have to think about, no psychologizing, no words, just releasing. And I sometimes just lie and watch the clouds with a feeling of being in love. At the beach yesterday, I saw a kingfisher catch, just hover, and so focused, so perfect, so in the moment. Catch one, and then the second 5 minutes, a second fish. And what I feel is held. I feel held by and wrapped in the arms of a loving universe. Doesn't mean I don't cry. Doesn't mean my sleep is, I think there's very human level that this will work its own way. And I feel clean. I feel pure. I feel as if the scream was a scream that was primal, and as if my animal, this beautiful, exquisite 58-year-old animal, took over. And I'm completely alive. I don't know what's going to unfold. I don't want to know. It's too soon to know. What I do know is I've been through 3 years of deep, deep, deep sabbatical, as Bio knows. And in a way, this sexual assault has been a physical manifestation of mental and psychological assault that's been around me. And in a sense, that I've been there is just brought this incredible beauty, this incredible relief, as if it's so connected that I'll never, ever feel this connected again. I think at our peril, we try to make things too sanitized. And I know grit. I know the wounds of which we speak, and sitting in them. I know this. But the lightness of being in the moment of knowing I was alive I will forever, forever be grateful for that feeling. And I'm very grateful to you for listening, because I think our world is made of these things. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened to me in the time that we were doing this course, discussing these very, very, very hard questions of what it means to be human in the 21st century. And I want to beg you, don't give up. You choose a course, we choose a course, we choose a journey. We create ourselves in the moments that God gives us. And part of that is the ripping open of our greatest vulnerabilities. And my guess is that's the greatest, greatest place that we hold love. Thank you very much. Aya, I'm not going to talk anymore.
Thank you, Eve. I'm gonna ask Tita. They say that there are some things that knowledge cannot swallow, and there are some things that cannot be spoken to by young ones. I'm gonna ask Tita. Tita, are you there? To just invite.
Good morning.
Yeah. Yeah, just a good morning, Tita.
Mm.
To just Brenda, could we just sit with Eve and this moment together? Just to, Tita, I cannot speak. There are no words to say.
I couldn't stop crying listening to you. Thank you for sharing, Eve. In Filipino, there's this thing we call kapwa. And that our kapwa is the self in the other. And so as you were telling your story, Eve, I was feeling almost everything that you were feeling. They say that our kapwa, our sense of kapwa and connection to the other is also very inside, is also within us in our loob. And that our loob, this inner sense of self, our sense of individuality is always connected to the individuality of others, of our kapwa. And what connects us is our ability to empathize, which we call damdamin. So in my culture, these three indigenous values of kapwa and loob and damdamin is a whole in itself. So even though I don't know Eve that well personally, listening to her story, I can feel what happened. And I can feel the space that we're in now. Listen, just holding this space together in silence and in virtual space at that. And I can connect it to everything that we've been holding together in this course for the last few months. And it is so huge, and it is so powerful, and it is so beautiful. I saw Francis Weller yesterday in Santa Rosa downtown. Some of you have heard about his work or read about his work on grief. And I said hi to him, but he must not have recognized me, so he just kept walking. So I felt ignored. But when there's so much grief, there's also so much gratitude that I feel. Because the deeper your grief, the greater your joy. And that if we don't know how to grieve, which I feel like in this culture, we really don't know how to do it well. Martin Prechtel says that everything that we are seeing right now in terms of war and violence and rape and diseases, everything is because we haven't learned how to process our grief. Grief that is piled on generation to generation. So I'm thankful that Brenda posted on the side chat that this is the work that is calling her, of learning how to tap into that grief. Tapping into it as a well of remembrance. And in the remembering, our bodies are going to speak. Our ancestors are going to speak. They're going to come and visit, and they're going to give us dreams. And it will be messy. It might make us angry. It might make us sad. It might make us confused. But as a culture where we are so used to want to do everything so quickly, get over, solve, problem solve, this call of discourse to slow down is very difficult to hear sometimes. So I want to sit with Eve's story and what she says about being in that in-between space now where you cannot go back to the world as you knew it. And in this course, we are being asked to live the world as we knew it. Or as we know it. And many of us are nervous because we don't know where to go, how to move forward. And we think we don't know, but we do. But we do. Like Eve knows. We also know. So thank you, Eve, for sharing your story. Thank you so much. Thank you, Baya, for calling me out. I had a bad night, actually. My heart was pounding all night. I had to take medication, which I usually don't. That's why I'm in hiding this morning. I'm not showing my face because I'm still in bed. But yeah, I just want to honor all of us for doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Tita. Thank you so much, Tita. And I want to call and invite Brenda also to speak.
Eve, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us. It was very brave and generous. And I want to honor that probably people on the call have been in different places in relationship to the story. Perhaps it broke your heart open Perhaps it reminded you an event that you went through and caused you to shut down, if that's your experience. I know that when I was head of East Bay Meditation Center, one of our teachers spoke on a similar story, and it caused a lot of triggers in people in the community who were unhealed from their own trauma. And so I just want to name that I've been smudging, and we all relate to stories differently. And I know it was meant for us to tap into something much deeper. So I'm really grateful for the story, Eve. And I want to invite everyone, regardless of how you're feeling, to give yourself a hug right now. Love yourself. And tap parts of your body just to get back in your body, because some people may have disassociated from that story. And if you did, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe your experience that perhaps it triggered some memories for you. So I just want to name that a lot of people in our world have been assaulted at one point in their life, and men and women. So I don't think of this as just a women issue. And there's so much coming to light in our world right now about power and abuse and things like that. So that might be up for people too. I just want to name that this may be a tender area to hear about right now, given what's going on in the world. Tomorrow,
Brenda, you muted yourself. Right.
I wanted to share that tomorrow is the Scorpio new moon. It's a time of shedding a lot of skins and layers of the stories we've been given and stepping into our sovereignty and our power. In that sense, Eve's story is very powerful right now. And remembering our divinity, that connection to spirit that you called in. There are times when we can have things around us that are greater than ourselves to help us in these times. And these times are also teaching us to, there's so much I want to say, but I won't go into it. There's a lot about the prophecy about humanity moving from third dimensional to fifth dimensional consciousness right now. Third dimensional is very in the head space. It's very intellectual. It's very us versus them, good versus bad. And there's a lot of energies coming down from the spirit world to help us dislodge some of our personal trauma, our ancestral trauma, because where we're headed into is a place where we are more in our hearts. We're more in our emotions. And some of these stories we have been taught to keep us powerless, separated, afraid, are being released. And there are beings that don't want us to wake up. And they're targeting some of us with the most light, because we're waking each other up to our hearts. And they know that this time is slipping through their fingers, where the darkness and the fear that holds so much sway over the world has kept us separated and small, keep our light diminished, is going away. It's inevitable now. We are in between stories right now. We are in between stories. And I just want to encourage you whenever you can to get still and get back in your heart, get still and go back in nature. Because Mother Earth will always hold us in this transition. She's waiting for us to catch up to her. She's already in the new vibration, and she's waiting for us to catch up. And we all have a role to play, and you're all sacred, and you all have gifts. You wouldn't be on this call and this course series if there wasn't some part of your heart that wanted the new story. And the in-between times are always hard. It's like a rite of passage, right? When you go from childhood to adulthood. You have to look back at your childhood and say, oh, I love this about being a kid. And here's what I grieve that I'm going to leave behind that I don't get to do anymore now that I'm an adult. I have new responsibilities for the tribe, for the village. And then you step over some threshold with your community holding you into the next phase of your life and all the gifts and the challenges and responsibilities that it carries. Humanity is currently going through what the way I liken it is going from its teenage state to its young adult state in terms of consciousness. And it requires us to get in our hearts and requires us to reconnect to each other and to the earth to be the next phase. And this is not an easy time. So I just want to, and it's also a beautiful time. The way I understand it in the ways that I'm thinking about this prophecy is that it's both a privilege and a responsibility to be alive right now, that our souls chose to be here in this time of shift. And Eve had to fight for her life because she's part of this transition. She's got work to do. We all got work to do to bring in this next time. And some of that is unlearning the stories of smallness and weakness that we've been very intentionally taught. So I feel really honored to be in this sacred circle with you. And it feels really appropriate to share now that I didn't get to do the rose medicine yet, but I will work with Erin on making that available sometime this week. And know that it's a soul retrieval process, and there is some forgiveness in there, but you forgive what you're ready to forgive. You don't have to forgive anything you're not ready to forgive. But to know that when we release our stuff and our ancestral stuff, whatever piece we can at that moment, it frees us up in ways we don't understand. There was a curandera that came up here regularly from Mexico, and I would always help her with her appointments. And the first couple of times she did limpias or energy cleansings on me to help me heal my stuff. But I think the third time she saw me, she said, you've done enough of your personal healing. It's time for you to start releasing ancestral stuff. And she said, so you're going to start feeling your grandmothers, your mothers, your great-grandmothers, your great-grandfathers, all that grief, anger, rage, sorrow, all these things that are going to come out of you. And I can't believe the things that came out of me in that session. I've had somewhat little trauma compared to some folks I know. And I felt like 1,000 pounds had been lifted off of me, and I felt sovereignty and power I hadn't felt before. And I felt some of that in Eve's story as well. There's some reclaiming of her spirit and her true nature that happened. And you were powerful before, and I see even more power in you now. Not that I wish this on anyone, but I do see that in you. So, I just want to, I'll share more on the page about some of the prophecies that I know of, because I see some of that in there. There's the Hopi prophecy, but there's also the eagle and the condor, and this time being one of coming into balance. And I'll share more about that on the Facebook page, because it's too much to go into here. But thank you for being present with Eve and her story, and both its beauty and its difficulty. And to know that I see the same light in all of you. And there's so many ways our lights have been covered over or hidden. Our gifts for this time covered over and hidden. And it's time to reclaim some of that. So sit with the Scorpio new moon tomorrow. It is a powerful time to release old stories. And to be who we came here to be. And I love you.
Love you back, Brenda. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. For it's, I don't know if Carolyn North is here. Carolyn North? No. Okay. Maybe she didn't join us today. I greet you wherever you are.
Yes, I did. I just unmuted myself.
I'm here.
Okay. Okay, Mother, please speak with us. Speak to us. You're an elder here. Please speak with us.
Well, what I've been thinking about, let me start in a different place. 2 days ago, I had a remarkable experience of taking power. And it was the culmination of 2 years of work. What I did 2 years ago was I bought a farm. After my husband died, there was some money, and I decided that what I wanted to spend it on was land in order to purchase it and give it away, to try and change the whole system of private property, to create a model of a different way of thinking about money and land and ownership. So I bought this little 3-acre farm right outside of Sebastopol, and for the last 2 years have been working with a group of 5 people, all working on a volunteer basis, to legally change it from being privately owned to being in the public trust. And what we have done in these 2 years is to create a community land trust, which means that, and it's a fairly, it's a way of thinking about land that we are not making up, but it is the first in Sonoma County. But it's a movement that is taking on some steam in the country. And what it is it's land that is both protected and also provides affordable housing for people. And it took, the laws are all made for ownership. So we had to push laws, we had to lean against them, stretch, and work for 2 years to make it legally possible to do this. And 2 days ago, I went to the title company and handed the deed over to the Community Land Trust. So we have launched this, I think, quite extraordinary thing in Sonoma County. And what I've been thinking about is how we are doing just what Brenda was talking about and just what Eve was talking about. We are changing the assumptions of how we live. And it feels to me very much like a shifting of assuming that we are being colonized. Just taking into our own hands and changing the assumptions about ownership and saying we don't have to do it that way. So what was very interesting in this act, which was kind of very quiet, I just went to the title company in town to sign a gazillion documents over, is that when I walked into the office, I was shocked by the culture in the office. I'd sort of forgotten that the corporate world is pretty soulless. So the room had canned air, no open windows. It had a sterile feel, and the people sitting at each of the desks all looked depressed and barely would talk. So I met with one of them in a boardroom, which was one of the most sterile rooms I've ever been in. And this poor woman wouldn't look at me, would not smile, handed me the papers, told me where to sign. And I decided I wasn't going to play the game. So I put down my pen and I said, would you like to know what I'm signing here? Can I tell you about it? Well, she didn't really want to hear, but I told her anyhow. And by the end, and I kept talking until I saw some response in her face. And gradually, a smile came to her lips. Gradually, she came to life. And I realized that this whole act of creating the Community Land Trust was one of asserting a new, alive, fun way of being, as opposed to assuming that we have to do it the old way. So that's what I'm sitting with as we go into this Scorpio moon. Is that it? I had no idea that was happening. And realizing that the powerlessness of that assumption of powerlessness that we are brought up to assume is not necessary. We don't have to do it that way. And not everybody has the money to buy a farm, but we all have the ability to do something. And I'm reminded of a conversation that I had with an African-American friend recently, the woman who I've known and loved for 30 some odd years. And after Trump was elected, we were talking about what it meant for people of color. And she was terrified. So I said to her, what do we do, Arisika? What can we do? And she looked at me with this fierce expression and she said, get to know us. So I'm remembering that right now because we don't have to do anything as grand as turn land over to a public trust. We can just get to know the people who we meet every day of every background. And we can all do that. And it feels very essential, very important to me. So that is my story of the moment.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you.
This is Isoke.
Aunt Isoke, you're here.
Eve, I'm looking at your face. I'm taking in your beauty. I'm noticing how humbled I feel. How grateful I am for your life and for your story. I'm grateful for the silence in this call that's holding all of this. I'm grateful to you, Brenda, for your framing and your reminder that something big is happening and that we're all part of it. I'm grateful to you, Lenny, for bringing your grief and expressing it on all our behalf. I'm grateful to you, Bio, for knowing what to do, even though you don't know what to do. I want to make another invitation in addition to the invitation about grief and learning to grieve. I want to invite us to learn how to own our hatred. Our contempt, our envy, our stinginess, our righteous, self-righteous rage. It's another area that we've pretended we don't have, and we make other people carry for us. And I'm noticing right now what happens now? We've formed bonds with each other. We've become entangled, more entangled. And some of us want to give each other the finger. And some of us want this to last for a long, long time. What next? How do we How do we navigate now? And as you were talking, Eve, I think one of the parts of your story that stuck with me the most was that you remembered to pray. What a miraculous thing to remember to pray under those circumstances. And so I remind myself, and I pray right now, I offer this prayer, that the next step will be shown to us individually and as a collective. I pray that the next step will be made known. How do we respond in this moment? And with that, I'm complete, Bayo.
So good to hear your voice, Auntie Soke.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. I feel called to continue to stitch a quilt in these transgressive moments. These are moments of irreverence, calling us to rethink everything. And Eve, listening to your story, you shared it with me yesterday. And I remember thinking there's something deeply unknowable about this experience, like you said today. Something that is at heart mysterious. Something that prohibits us from figuring it out. It's a deep mystery. And I just want to invite all of us to notice the first invitation I gave when we started this out. Bringing in your pain. Those little critters are sitting next to you now, or wherever you've placed them, on your heart, on your shoulder. I don't know where you've thrown them or tossed them. If you threw them in the dustbin, please pick them out and bring them, shake them off the dust and put them on the table right next to you. Those things that bite and eat away at you and compost you and chastise you. And as you do that, please listen to these words. Not only that our pain is an elder, but our pain makes us elders. My people would say it's not the gray hair on your head that makes you an elder. It's your unspeakable experience, the work you've done with pain that makes you weird. Hillary told me a story about a miracle that opened up a circle, indigenous elders inviting her in to be an elder. I want to open up that space here and acknowledge each of you. Those of you who want to work with the critters sitting next to you as elders. I want to honor every one of you as an elder and to kneel down to you as an elder. And to invite you to say anything you want to say, as elders would in a circle of the sacred. And that's it. So if you feel called to speak freely.
I want to share that when that happened a couple weeks ago with the Circle of Elders, the request was that all of us who had been on the outside of that circle were invited in to speak with the Council of Elders. But the request was that we had to speak from our heart only.
We invite you in. Thank you, Hillary.
Sa tanan. This is Ling Ling. I would thank you everyone for being here right now. I want to share about this canoe that you see. A couple days ago, I celebrated the canoe dream that came to me, a blessed gift that speaks to what Eve shared with us, the ancestral trauma of rape. Not my rape, but my ancestral grandmas and grandpas. And in this gift of the canoe, with indigenous people of here in California, who bestowed us this log to build for our communities to heal. When that dream came to me, I didn't understand it at all. It took me 3-4 years to figure it out. And along the way, being gifted this 22-foot log is figuring out that puzzle that Eve so eloquently, you just say it so beautifully with the strength of the power, the light of life. That's what this canoe is. Speaking from the heart, speaking of light in the darkness, building together, making our own paddles to get through this life and many other lives and past lives and future lives. So I'm really thankful to share this space with you. And I purposely am not showing my face because I'm the vessel that's sharing this gift of the canoe with you all. Except that's what it's calling me to do. And part of it too is carrying in what many of you have been saying, things that are positive and negative, and also taking out the things that are not needed anymore and picking up things that would help along the way, or exchanging and sharing, just what we're doing here. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you.
Eve, I'd like to share something with you. Thank you. I'm trying to reconnect to that story that you gave, which was so powerful, and thank you for sharing and having the courage to open. Thing that struck me was this remembrance of praying, that you remembered to pray at that time, and somebody else said that. And also these choices or these times when we are placed to claim our true nature, and we never know when they're going to come. We never know what that moment may be. And I remember just to put it in context, a few years ago, I had a complete shift of my own inner being, and I remember crying. This is at the point of so much pain that I just wanted to die. But I was phoning a friend, and she'd said, out of the blue, have you ever felt like praying before? And it was so much out of the blue for me to hear that, or to even think of it. And my mind just didn't want to pray. I put the phone down. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to pray, because I felt like I would be breaking something in myself about holding on to the truth. Holding on to the truth which I'd been taught, hold on to the truth, science and all that stuff. And I wanted to hold on to my idea of truth until something broke, and I prayed because I had nothing else to do. And somehow my life shifted from that moment. And my whole journey since then has been trying to understand what is it that became alive in me? What is it that brought something out in me that I had never even known existed? But even from that moment, there's been still pain coming through, still, as I'm sure everyone has, these periods of just absolute lows. And just last autumn, October, November, I just got together with a partner, and we were in Thailand, and I was going through some really strange periods and things in my life, and understandings around my upbringing and the way I'd painted myself out of existence. A lot of anger was coming up following Brexit, and all this stuff that I was beginning to feel myself as I felt when I was in the 80s, being haunted by this same story of like hiding for cover and saying, I'm an adult now, I'm not going to, I want to stand up to that's happening. And I feel I had to go into my own past to say, what is it that I had denied? Had I thrown into to the cellars of my being in order to try to belong? And now I no longer had faith in that story that I'd been sold. And I was uncovering all this stuff about myself, and the anger, yes, was coming up. And also, I mean, even with this friend of mine that I was still, or the partner I was with, still wanted to rely on these stories of who's going to hold me or whatever, or that I needed somebody else to be with. And we broke up when I was in Thailand. And I remember just before going to Thailand, I was thinking, do I want to take this risk? Because I knew breaking up with a female partner has always been the thing that takes me down. And I'm always, in these really terrible spaces. And when we broke up, I thought, I've done it again. I've lost control of myself. And why did I do this? And I was pacing the room, and I was asking her, please, will you just hug me? Just hug. I had this feeling of this intense terror in my body, so intense. Like I was being pulled away from God and everything that I believed in, that I had begun to piece back together. And I was filled with this intense fear that I was being taken away from it all again. And I said to her, please, will you just hug me just once? And she couldn't see what I was going through. She just kept saying, I think she was half asleep, and said, I can't right now because I'm in a difficult space myself. My brother's been saying something, and I was pleading with her just to hug me. And to her, maybe it just looked like a hug. For me, it was my life that was on really, like, inside of me. That's what I was feeling, that my life was on the very edge of something. And eventually she said, after much pleading, and I kept pacing the room and I couldn't sleep, she said, look, I will give you a kind of a hug, and I'll hug you until I find that I can't do it anymore or something. And so I said, okay. And she hugged me, and then after a few seconds she said, I can't hold that anymore. But it was enough. I don't know what it was, but just having that bodily contact, I went back to sleep. And this was the strange thing, that I was in, and these are things that you can't explain, but as I was sleeping, or thought I was asleep, I felt this thing on my shoulder, like this dark thing. And and then I was trying to pull it off. I pull it, and then it screamed. As I kind of tried to tear it off my neck, it made this god-awful scream of this distance from God, from all things loving. And it kind of went off, but it wasn't off completely. And it was 3 times I felt like I was screaming, or I was screaming, or this thing was screaming, I'm not sure, but I was screaming everything in my body to get rid of this thing. And then second time it came off, and then the third time it came off my shoulder. And then I remember waking and thinking, was that a dream, or was that real, or what? And I And I said to the girl, to Lindsay, did you hear anything? And she said she didn't hear a thing. And I felt like I'd been screaming. My whole soul, my whole body, everything in my body had been screaming. And I couldn't still work out whether that was a dream or not. But as I looked out, the whole world had become much lighter and much cleaner, and the weight that I had been feeling had kind of gone. And the reason I'm just saying this story was just because of what you were saying about screaming and screaming and screaming, and this idea of claiming our true nature, of that we never know what it is. I mean, it could have been a small thing, could have been a big thing, I don't know. But for me, it felt a huge thing, for me, it felt like a claiming of something in that moment when I in that dream or whatever it was, of trying to reclaim something for myself and to get rid of whatever it was that was in me. And so it's kind of what I'm saying here is a prayer to everybody else who's on this call, to say that there are these moments when, who knows, whenever they will happen, of making choices, and there may be inner choices as much as outer choices, to claim something. And it feels like we're being pushed to claim something, to make a sacred choice of what it is that we believe in and care. And last weekend I was at a Sufi gathering, and I was honored with the position of being the writing resident. And it was all about the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine and this balancing. And I remember the Sufi, some question was asked about anger, and the Sufi leader didn't really respond to it, because I feel that his being came from so much love, so much warmth, so much, he couldn't almost comprehend the anger or the aggression or the fear or the terror that can claim some people's beings and cause them to cause so much pain to others. And that it's very real, that to me it feels it's very real to understand and know this pain, to know. And at the end of the session, a woman mentioned a dream she'd had. And she said that the dream was, and I can't exactly remember the beginning of the dream, but she said somebody had died or they had been killed. And the thing that struck me was, she said in the dream she'd asked, where do we bury the person? I think the person himself was the perpetrator, but she still said, where do we bury the body? And somebody responded, there is something about this, about making experience sacred, making our experiences sacred. And it recollected a dream of mine I had that very night as well, about a child. We were in this we were in this place with metal, kind of, what do you call the safety, like a courtyard, a basketball courtyard, and a child had sort of stuck his finger up at somebody outside the courtyard, much bigger, and the glare and the evil that came out of the eyes of the other person on the outside, I knew that he was going to kill this child, and the child knew that he was going to be killed and he ran and he ran and he tried to climb over this fence, and this other man or boy caught him, and he'd got him in his neck, and he was screaming, and I was screaming, and everyone was screaming, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then the neck snapped, and it was like this, like it was almost like the original sin of something, of like where we are called and we say don't do it, and we still do it, or we don't hold our grief, we don't hold our hatred, we don't hold our, and we do it to others, and we do it to ourselves. And it was this making sacred that comes to me, making sacred our experience, and how we can hold, as Bio was saying, hold our grief, hold our hatred, and make it sacred. Don't do that.
Thank you, brother.
Don't do that to another, and feel and make sacred our own experiences. And for me, that in a way is what the sacred, the sacred masculine thing that I was feeling through, of how to hold these experiences, and to hold these energies, these dark energies that are around. And as Eve did, and screaming, whether it's physical screaming, whether it's internally, but finding ways to make sacred this world that we live in. and the experiences we have. And I just make a prayer that there is something, yeah, there are these experiences that are to be had. I think I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you
for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for being in the space together and witnessing these stories, these prayers, these moments that are so human and so magical, painful, but part of who we are. It's part of our dharma, of our destiny. It's the essentials piece of what we are. So I wanted to create a little space to thank our friends who have been helping us to harvest this experience graphically and through words, poetry, images, photographs, drawings. And I just am reminded of how each of us, just through our presence, whether we show up for these calls or not, are making this, that it wouldn't be possible to have this experience without each and every being, including the ones that we can't see, including all of our ancestors, including all of the natural places that we come from and that we live in. So I just wanted to express that gratitude to my friends who are helping to capture in the ways that they can the experience that we're co-creating and co-weaving here together. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for that reminder. I know Eve had to go, but of prayer. I had an experience very much like Motur's experience where someone asked me to pray once and I just didn't understand what that meant. And in the 4 years since then, I feel how important that practice is for me now. Thank you.
Let's close the circle. Brenda.
Excuse me. Thank you so much for your sharings today. Everything was so beautiful. So I'm going to invite you, if there's a tree nearby you that you can look at, I'm going to invite you to look at it. And if there is no tree nearby you, then I'm going to invite you to just close your eyes and imagine a tree that you have a connection with. And as you're looking at your tree or with your eyes closed or open, I'm going to lead you in a tree meditation that I do every morning. It's part of my practice. And this is a practice that is for love for you. The trees want to give us so much love and guidance and support in this time. Trees are angels in disguise. They help us to be in balance, to stay centered, to ground and transform energy which is not aligned with our higher selves. So try to just be with the tree that you're seeing in your mind's eye and let go of any thoughts. Try to be in a space of no thoughts if you can. And if the thoughts come, it's okay. Just let them go. Imagine them as clouds passing by. And invite in thoughts that bring you joy as you focus on your breath. And breathe in through your nose. And imagine that the tree is giving you many, many atoms of pure love, consciousness, energy coming out of the tree, coming into your body. And as you breathe out, I want you to visualize all the energies that are not in alignment with your higher self to come out with your out breath, and that you're handing them over to the tree. The tree can help transform them and compost them. And just breathing in the pure love consciousness of the tree, the rootedness of the tree reaching up towards the heavens. The tree is a symbol of connection between the earth and the spirit worlds in so many traditions. And they have much to teach us, these grandfathers and grandmother trees. And just continue breathing in the pure love conscious energy of the trees that surround you. Breathe out all energies not in alignment with your higher self. If you do this daily, things may come up for you. Energies which were blocked or things that stand in our way. It's okay to feel them. We cannot release or transform things that we're not aware of. And ask the tree to help you release any energies that you need to release at this time. Sometimes I release to the tree my ego, my impatience, my judgment, my self-defeating thoughts. Sometimes I release to the trees my self-shaming or my shaming of others. Sometimes I release to the trees my brokenheartedness. Whatever it is that the trees carry for you, they are honored to be of service in this time to help us to remember who we truly are. So thanking your tree. And I may have used this before, but another part of my morning ceremony, I'm going to ask you to repeat each phrase after me. I am joy.
I am joy.
I am joy.
I am worthy of all love is.
I'm worthy of all of this.
I am laughter.
I am laughter.
Laughter.
I am abundant.
I'm abundant.
I am grateful for all the blessings entering my life.
I'm grateful for all the blessings entering my life.
I am God and I am Goddess.
I'm God.
I am balance.
I am balance.
I am compassion. I am trust.
I am trust.
I'm trust.
I am fulfilling my mission and contract to love every moment.
I'm fulfilling my mission and contract to love never.
I am wonderful.
I am wonderful.
I am a miracle.
I am a miracle.
I'm a miracle.
I am love everywhere present.
Everywhere present.
Everyone's present.
Love so vast it can hold all things.
Love so vast it can hold all things.
All things.
I am all heart.
I'm all heart.
All heart.
Thank you for being together today.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. And thank you all.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend.